Hello, Miss Bell's Algebra 2. This is March 23rd. We're looking at the mid-chapter 4 test. And let's get started after you put your email address and all that in. Mine are going to be out of order, so you're going to probably have to, move ahead on your test, because when it's online, you are going to be given a mixed number. It's going to be all over the place. So you're going to want to find this one, and then work with me on this one, and then just move ahead as I move ahead. Okay, so you're just gonna have to look for the ones that I'm going over, because like I said, yours are going to be out of order. So what are the coordinates of the vertex of the graph or table? Is it a maximum or minimum? So this point right here, is this a minimum or a maximum of this graph? And what is that point? What do you call it? What are the coordinates for that point right there? Okay? And so you would choose A, B, C, or D. Pretty simple ones. Same for this one. Look for this one in your test. This point right down here, is that a minimum or maximum? And what are the coordinates of that vertex? Okay? For this graph right here, is that a minimum or a maximum? And what are the coordinates for that point? For this problem, hopefully you're pausing this as I'm going forward. You are to graph the function and identify the vertex. Okay, so pretty much just look for the vertex. First of all, you got to understand that it is a positive x squared, so that means it's going to be positive. Think smiles. Think positive, a smiley face. It's going to look like this. Okay, smiley face. Remember, if it's negative, it's going to be like a frown. So think negative. If this was a negative x squared, it would be a frown. But since it's positive, it's going to be a smiley face. So that kind of limits it to A, C, and D already. This is a negative. This would be a negative function. Okay, so in order to figure out what the vertex is, we could figure out what x is by taking negative b over 2a. What's a and b? Well, remember, in standard form, we have a here, b here, and c here, the coefficients. So b is a 4, so it's negative 4 over 2 times a. I have 1x, so it's 2 times 1. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So I gave you half of the answer there. All right, so it's going to be, then if you plug in negative 2, plug it back into x, and you just work it all out, you'll get what the y equals. Or you guys could just be using Desmos, plug it in, and then you would just move your cursor after you've highlighted this problem, after you've plugged that problem in, highlight the cursor right there at the vertex, and it will give you the vertex. Okay? So Desmos is the easiest way to go. Okay, so Desmos graphing calculator. Or you could use it on your graphing calculator and find the vertex there also. Okay, you could use your graphing calculator, just do the same thing as Desmos. All right, for this one, identify the vertex of the graph of the function. Okay, so the vertex, remember, is hk. But this is normally written as minus h, so you're going to have 2 negatives to make a positive, in other words. So this is your h and this is your k, but remember, this is going to have to be a negative here. Okay, so that should be a lot of help for you there. For number 6, find number 6 on your test. Identify the maximum and minimum value of the range of the graph of the function. Right here. Here we go. So this is going to be like this. It's going to be a smiley face, okay, because it's positive 2 up there. And here's your xy. Here's your vertex. The y is going to be this. So you're going to go with this number right here, okay? And everything above that number here is going to be on this graph. So pick A, B, C, or D. That explains that, okay? The next one, which is the graph of this equation? Once again, you could plug it into Desmos, or you could just look for the look for these characteristics, because this is written in vertex form, so it's kind of easy. Here's your vertex. It should be 2, -4. And then, being a negative function, negative means it's going to be, think of negative, think of sad, think of frown, think of, you know, negative n. It kind of looks like an N too, so frown, negative. All right, so it's going to be like that, and the vertex is going to be at 2, -4. What's the vertex of the equation? This one, once again, if you just plug it into Desmos, type it in, use this little keyboard down here. No, not that. Show the keypad. So just use this keypad down here, plug it in, or you could key it in, doesn't matter, and it'll give you the vertex. Or put it in your graphing calculator, or you could use x equals -b over 2a to find what your x is. Once you find out what your x is, plug it in and you can find what your a is. And once again, or I'm sorry, what your y is. You can find out what your y is. I'm just talking about a, b, and c are the coefficients, so that's what you plug in there. Or just plug it in Desmos or a graphing calculator, that would be the easiest. Number 9, what is the maximum or minimum value of the function? What is the range? Once again, it's positive, so it's going to be like a smiley face. And then you could use this formula to figure out what x is, plug in your x, in for x here, and then you'll figure out what your y is. Or you could just plug it into Desmos or your graphing calculator, and you could figure out what the minimum value is, or if it's a maximum. Remember, this is going to be shaped like this. It's the point down here, so would that be minimum or maximum? And that range of y. Okay, this one. Once again, you can see I have a little note from earlier, down, frown, you know, think negative. So it is going to be opening down like this. So if it looks like that, would that be a minimum or a maximum vertex? And, you know, what would that point be? Once again, if you put it in Desmos or your graphic calculator, you could see it real easily. Or you could use, you know, the x equals -b over 2a, figure out what x is, plug it in, then you could figure out what your y is. That would be, you know, the y is what you're going to want to be looking at and figuring out your range. Okay, this one, what is the graph of the equation? Once again, you could use x equals -b over 2a. You could figure all that out. Actually, we did figure that out by hand, or you could look at it on Desmos or your graphing calculator. And this is the actual point. That is the vertex. Okay. Notice it's negative. So negative, it's going to be shaped like a frown too. So you could take that information to figure out that one. That gave you a lot of information on that one. May have to rewind it a bit. Okay, doing this stuff. A little bit of FOIL and then a little bit of factoring. FOIL in reverse. Okay, here we go. Take the first times the first. You get 25m squared, right? Outside. Multiply the outsides. 5m times -1 gives you -5m. The insides, 5 times 2 gives you 10m, because there's an m with that 5. Then the last ones, you want to multiply this last one times this last one. +2 times a -1 is a -2. Just combine the like terms, and it's going to give you one of these answers over here on the left. Okay, when you're thinking of number 13, you're going to want to think of what you can multiply, two numbers you can multiply to get 4n squared. So part of it's going to be 2n's. When you multiply 2n's together, you're going to get, n squared obviously, but what two numbers go with those n's to get 4? Then you're going to want to think of the other numbers, the numbers you can multiply and get negative 25. But when you add them up, you get 0, because notice there's no n in the middle. So it just, ends up canceling out. When you do the FOIL in reverse, the outside and the inside would cancel each other out. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful enough for you for number 13. For number 14, okay, you can factor out what number goes into 4, 8, and 16 that you can divide out to bring out of the parentheses. And then how many n's, there's an n in each one of these, right? So how many can you take out of all 3 of them? Okay. You can't go overboard. I can't take more than 1 n out because there's only 1 n in this one, okay? So now that you got that out, what can you multiply by in order to get everything that is here? When you multiply by these numbers on the inside, you're going to get 4, 8, and 16 when you do the distributive property with these choices. It's nice that she's given multiple choices, because then you could just go through and you could see, okay, does that work? When I multiply this on the outside times this on the inside, does that give me this up here? You can think of it that way. For number 15, we know that, we're going to have an x and an x. X and all these have x and x. What the big deal is, you got to think about what two numbers can you multiply to get positive 8. But when you add them together, you get negative 9. Go through the choices that she's given you. A multiple choice makes it a heck of a lot easier, because you have, just go through the choices and which one works. When you multiply them together, you get positive 8. These back numbers here. But when you add them together, you get negative 9. And lastly, another FOIL. What was the last thing here? Lastly, another FOIL backwards. We know it's going to be, v times v. So we have a v times v somewhere, all right? But what two numbers can I multiply together to get negative 24? But when I add them together, I get a negative 2. That's going to be the other two numbers along with your v's. I really hope this helps. And good luck with the rest of the test.